All right, well, good morning. I'm Clint DeShan, Town Manager. We're here for the Ordinance Review Committee for the Town Council. Chair is Rob Laraway. He's en route. He got caught with traffic.
Dan Merrick, I am a member of the committee and chair of the council.
And Lori, our HR consultant. You want to say hi?
Good morning.
Okay, and then Shelley, who's the staff representative, usually is committee. I'm here because we've been working so much on revisions to our policy for the employee handbook and ordinances regarding personnel matters. So as we're waiting the other counselors to come that are notified en route, I thought we'd just lay out here briefly, Dan, if you want, that the goal for the staff, if possible, is we'd like to have this presented to the council on Monday. Because of the timing of readings and so forth, need to amend our ordinances as well as adopt a new ordinance amendment that would allow us to start a procedure to adopt an employee handbook. So the whole move is to kind of take the next progression. It appears that the council has been following charter and went to some major revisions in the mid-90s. And what has happened is that some of the employee policies have become out of date, and the ordinances, some of the amendments may have been missed from time to time, as well as it's become unwieldy for us to keep amending ordinances and adding to ordinances for every minor policy amendment we make. So with the advice of an attorney, we put forward a plan where we would be, in essence, repealing the entirety of chapter 28, except for sections 28.1 and 28.2, and which would be the purpose of administration. And we will be posting this with the agenda on Monday, which would include attorney review process where we would adopt an employee handbook. Pursuant to charter, the council puts the manager responsible for this. There we go. Hey, perfect. We just started. Wait a few minutes and I'll do the process.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, so you want to do a quick intro and then I can continue with the update on the charter. How's that?
Sure. Welcome to the Ordinance Review Committee, everybody. You're already here.
Yeah. All right.
We're recording. Okay.
Great.
Recording's on. So again, as we were outlining the remaining of this, the charter calls that the council puts the town manager in charge of personnel matters and is responsible for presenting to the council rules. So what we've done is taking that reading and adopted a repeal of the entire chapter 28, replacing it with 28.1 and 28.2. And actually it's an amendment to 28.1 and 28.2, but those would be the only pieces in ordinance, which outlines the process where the council would annually review the handbook at the recommendation of staff, town manager, bringing it forward. You can do it at additional junctures as well if there's an emergency need, but otherwise this would be a mandatory once a year. This would hit the council. It comes to the Ordinance Review Committee. After the Ordinance Review Committee recommends it to the council, it would be brought for a public hearing at the council level. And if approved, a public hearing would then be approved by the council, whether, I don't know if this would be consent calendar or action item annually. I think we can determine that when we get there, but it would be on the, for a formal vote of the council to approve it on an annual basis. So if we're kind of good there before we kind of step on, that outlines a process that if we can get this on the agenda for the 9th, the public hearing would be January 13th, and then the final adoption by the council would be the meeting in February, which happens to also be, I believe, February 13th. So it takes us into the beginning of February. The current ordinances and policies are way overdue for an update. So I think my comment to the council is that where we are now is having this would be a major step forward. It gets us to a communicable handbook to the staff. We kind of work the new ordinances to say that it allows us to administer things more clearly, and have a handbook that we can provide to them upon hire, as opposed to here's a stack of policies that are disjointed, no particular order, alphabetized, if anything. Here's an set of ordinances, go on the website to Municode, look at that, and it kind of depersonalizes the relationship with the employees. So a handbook we felt was a better way to go. We did adopt, and I should check with the, we did adopt handbook, right? As opposed to personnel policy.
We're calling it a personnel policy handbook.
Personnel policy handbook. There we go. So, here's the trick. As a committee, I'd ask today, as she goes through the other changes, we've done more revisions to the draft you have. Majority are grammatical, but there are some substantive things that we had to deal with. We did come across the 2021 council adopted change that that was not published. There were changes made, but it was never published
In the ordinance?
in ordinance.
Okay.
Yes.
So we've updated to all those so that they're all incorporated in. A lot of that ordinance change too was DEI sensitivity, capitalization of the town, capitalization of roles. But then there were they updated to current legal requirements in some cases. Lori's taken us even a bigger step further, but if that process works, I think by the end of this committee meeting, if you're okay and comfortable, we want to have this published for Monday, so that before the public hearing in January, it's available for public inspection for an entire month.
So it'll be, the sequence would be Monday, we would have an order before the council, either on the consent agenda, that's call a public hearing in January.
Yep.
With the intent of holding a public hearing in January and then acting on this change
In February.
in February to section 28.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think Lori's recommendations, we bring this up on an annual basis. If everything passes, the annual review would be about this time of year every year, which is kind of nice. It gets us away from fiscal year log jams in the summer and kind of gets us into the holiday season, which we're working pretty well with right now, that it could be a December public hearing, January approval every year, that we could kind of be in that routine.
And Clint, just one other thing to add. I know we talked about this yesterday. Yours and my recommendation is to give the council, the full council, a clean version. This thing is really hard to read. We wanted you to have, as the ordinance review committee, this red line document with the yellow sections that say what was in ordinance, but you probably found it quite challenging to read. We think that the council would benefit more from reading a clean copy, and the same with the public review in January. So if you have any thoughts about that, we certainly would welcome them.
Yeah, I see your hand up. I think it's probably worthwhile to maybe have both, have a clean version available and a version that shows what's been changed, just for full transparency. Sorry, Shelley.
No, that's fine. I was going to say past practice has always been that we provide both copies. So the public can look at the two copies side by side to see whether or not the clean copy actually mirrors the changes that were made by the committee or the recommended parties. So historically, with any elections documents, ordinance changes, amendments to charter, they've always got both copies.
So the only trick with this one is we're taking a charter and a bunch of disjointed policies and converting them into one clean handbook. So we could take, I think how are we gonna reference all the policies that we've incorporated in that are separated?
Yeah, I think maybe, so you can say they're located in a bunch of different places.
Yeah.
How many places are these things located? I mean, if you just say these are where they might be.
I think the quote unquote staff policies probably aren't even published, are they?
Yeah.
Well, the only thing that you currently have that's publicly digestible is the actual ordinance, which we already know doesn't even have the right language because it doesn't mirror the changes that were made in 2021. When I talk about the two copies that I think should be paralleled and posted, what I'm talking about is
The ordinance.
this actual personnel policy handbook as it's redlined, and then the actual personnel policy handbook as it is clean. I'm not talking about pulling in the charter and all the ordinance language. I'm saying that these two documents side by side would be posted on the website, and those would be the volumes. And then what we would do is actually put together an opening statement that says what was the intent of this document being published.
Right.
And then that way that gives the background to the public that that was the intent of the document coming into creation.
Okay, so we probably at a minimum, and I'm gonna lean to the board, we probably should do a list in a document of all the internal policies that staff had adopted.
Can I ask a question? You are redlining the whole personnel policy in the ordinance, correct? You're replacing the whole thing. So
Yes,
this handbook replaces that. So you have a repeal and replace. So in theory, the redlined handbook is just our work. You're replacing the ordinance with the handbook. So the ordinance is the red line, the handbook is the new policy. What's in the handbook and we redlined is our work to get the handbook ready for the
the
new
handbook didn't exist,
to
right?
replace.
Right.
For its new role.
Yeah.
Right, so realistically, the handbook is replacing, that's the replace of the repeal of the ordinance, the personnel policy.
Mhm.
That makes it pretty clear,
So
Mitch.
then you just have the two volumes.
And then we could do a list of internal policies incorporated into the handbook. If anybody wants them, they're available, we can provide them, but I mean, they're,
Well,
Is
I
it
guess,
worth,
yeah, I mean, I guess if the new
juice
handbook,
worth the squeeze?
yeah,
That might be.
if the new handbook already has everything that was internal, we're saying this is everything that we had, various places. It sort of is an active.
do you want a memo? Manager memo explaining why we're doing what we're doing that I just explained
That's-
here?
Yeah, like an intent, this is the intent of this personnel policy handbook.
Okay,
And it is comprised of bang, 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 and bullet points.
You can do
Is it
that.
simply?
So will we still have the marked up,
Ordinance.
oh, no, well, this is the marked up ordinance, right?
that's the marked up ordinance.
Everything after here is repealed,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and then what we'll have is, will we have this red line, yellow, will we have this document that you've been working on
Mhm.
and a clean document?
Yes.
Okay, that's weird, I think that makes sense.
I think Mitch is suggesting something different, which I actually like better.
My
Okay.
suggestion is that the handbook that has been marked up, that is just our work. The product of our work is everything that is
Clean
clean,
version.
right?
Yeah.
And that is replacing what's repealed. The repealed stuff is the ordinance language that we're taking out.
Cause that's what I gave. the
So
red
you're
line
saying
copy.
don't show the marked up?
Don't show the marked up because what you're doing in reality is replacing what's in the personnel policies in the ordinance with the handbook. That's the finished, that's the document we're giving. You're not replacing the written up, the colored handbook that we worked on. You're replacing the
replacing-
ordinance.
We are replacing a big chunk of ordinance that's no longer, so this is not the full red line actually,
The
right?
full red line would be an additional 10 pages of
Yeah.
just disappeared.
Yes,
So we'll show that.
I think it, at least showing that that was there, all of this isn't being created from scratch, that we had a bunch here. There's also a bunch more being added that we have compiled from various places, that's just in the clean new handbook.
Mhm.
I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, we don't need to show the whole red line handbook.
Yep.
Okay.
But perhaps showing the red line ordinance,
Final handbook.
Or just
In-
say everything after this point has been
How,
repealed.
yeah.
how long has this existing handbook been in existence? I mean, when you say it's what we've worked on, I mean, is this something that's been there?
The last handbook that existed was in the 90s and they've never done one since. This
So
is
that's,
brand
that was
new.
our starting point?
This is our starting point. We brought everything in and said, let's start cleaning it up and build a book again.
Okay, so this is the whole book.
It's a start over. Yeah, it's a start over of
I see.
We
ordinances,
didn't- yeah.
policies, and et cetera.
We did not use the 1990 version.
I see.
Yeah. And then the fourth piece would be a memo. So I'm hearing a redlined ordinance, the clean ordinance, which would be a
Yeah.
one pager.
Yep.
The final handbook, and then a memo saying how we did this and why.
That sounds great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Okay,
That makes super clear, and makes all the, I think, the necessary
we
documents.
can do that. Okay. So at this point, then I guess I kind of want to kick it over to Lori, who maybe, who at this point needs to kind of field questions from you may have and what you've looked at and, you know, a brief summary of. Or do you want to start with your questions, Rob? Council's done a review, you can go either way.
I have a question about the proposed ordinance, the 28-2, the administration piece. Amendments to this policy shall be, I'm after this 22 administration. Amendments to this policy shall be as needed by order of the town council to amend the employee handbook and require a public hearing. Why do we need? So we're gonna change, you know, you can't wear open-toed shoe sandals while you're working for Public Works. We're gonna make that change to the handbook. we really need a public hearing and then a 30-day, or can we just do it by an order, which would have an opportunity for people to comment?
Go either way. We were kind of sustaining, do the annual by hearing.
Yeah, I think the annual should be by public, I think the annual review, but if we have to make a change in June.
Yeah.
I mean, you envision we can change the handbook in June if we have to? If the state passes a law.
Yeah.
That says, you can't, you can't wear open toe shoes while you're working.
Yep.
It's a police officer, something,
Yep, some shit.
outlandish, yeah. Or if you're working at the international airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement to have gloves for police.
Oh, yeah, and like the Crown Act that came forward that she had talked to us before, when that passed, we would either queue that up, we'd look at when the annual was and say, okay, let's just put this in, we follow state law at all times.
Yeah.
But we would put that into the annual review, or if it happened to be that we just approved it in January, the law passes in February, we would probably come in. So you're saying if we come in February with a new legal change that we feel we should implement, not wait a year,
Just do it by order.
just do it by
And
order.
the annual review would be,
Yep.
I have the public hearing, where you notice it, allow public, I assume the employees could speak to
Which
something.
that wouldn't be part of if you did it in January, correct?
If if you did something in between, that doesn't become part of the annual review.
Well, it would be, I mean, if we did something in March, it would then be, if we had to make a change to the handbook in March. It would, get folded in, and then, again, someone could speak at the time the council is considering the action, but. Then we just have a formal public hearing, and I'm thinking the 30-day notice public hearing, right, where we notice well, 7 days to notice a public hearing. And then you have to, and we wait 30 days to, I mean, it's essentially three council meetings to pull off this process.
I'm fine with it, it's your call.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need for a public hearing for the amendments throughout the year.
Agreed.
Unless anybody can envision a situation where that would be. I mean, maybe if there is an amendment that is particularly controversial, it's not as obvious as that, or we're not just doing basic, compliance with interstate law. I mean, maybe, council can decide
So, but if it's done by an order, would there be opportunity, there'd still be opportunity?
for public
in that,
comment.
right?
Yeah, we open it up first before,
Yeah.
we put it on the table. And then if I remember to ask people to put it on the table, and then we get a presentation from staff, why they're proposing it, and then we invite the public to talk to us about it, and then council discusses it, and we pass the order.
Or not, or decide to do
Yeah.
a hearing or something like that.
And we could always
Yeah.
call a public hearing if we
Yeah.
feel it's contentious. But, so I guess I'm suggesting require a public hearing to strike that piece out.
Can I just suggest that maybe we reach out to the attorney to make sure that because this is in ordinance, that can actually happen?
Yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
makes sense. Appreciate that, Mitch.
Keep us honest, Mitch.
Yeah,
In the next 24 hours.
Yeah, because we gotta notice this.
Yeah, all
We can
right,
change it, we can always change it.
Yeah.
We don't have to, you can publish it like this, and we just put a placeholder here that we may change that.
I mean, if the lawyer
Yep.
feels like that is necessary, then, I mean,
We'd add it back.
yeah, I don't think we're gonna push back against that.
Okay.
Never know.
Any other questions before we, or do we want to hear from Lori before we have more questions, or? Let's go with that. Lori, do you wanna tell us a little bit more?
Well, we have continued to work on the handbook, and as Clint pointed out, Shelley found it's labeled proposed revisions, but I'm assuming she checked the minutes to say that these were actually accepted, January 8th, 2021, which I did not know about and Clint did not know about until Shelley found it in her review. I went through each of those. There's 10 pages. I went through each of these revisions and either incorporated it into the now current version, which you don't have, of the redlined document, or felt that the language that we had there already was better and left what we had. So there were a few good catches in here, things that had been changed that we were not aware of. So those have been added to the handbook. Other than that, I think we need to use the time we have now, which is only 30 minutes, to get your questions, because anything that you would like to see changed, we need to do today so that I can do the clean version and we can move forward with the timeline.
And I do remember us reviewing those and voting on it, but yeah, I'm surprised that it was never incorporated.
do we want to bring it up on screen? Do you want to just point us to places? How do you want to do this?
I I mean, probably point to places, I think we all have access to it right now, or,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
And
maybe,
I can share the red line document. It is going to be the updated one, so might not match exactly, but if you need to go to a certain section, I can pull it up. But if there may be a question, we don't even need to look at what's there, so we can just start with questions and go from there.
well, I didn't have a ton of questions, I did read through this, but did, Leo or Dan have anything that gave them concern, pause?
I've scanned it. I'm relying on our HR consultant and our town manager to do this. I have a keener eye and interest in how council policy and the ordinance works, but in terms of what the day-to-day the policies are, there's nothing that's gonna stand out at me that, nothing stood out to me in my scan that struck me as a challenge.
I mean, it seemed to me like it struck a good balance of both making sure that the employees' rights were clear and also their obligations in both directions were clear. I mean, I felt like there might be things that I didn't think of reading through it, but it's, I mean, as Dan said, I'm not the HR expert here, but looking through it, it felt pretty thorough and certainly more accessible than the ordinance did. So, I don't know.
Nothing.
You include you're keeping what we added last year or earlier this year on complaints involving the town manager, and that's that section, so that's in there.
Did that ever get in there?
That's
a
in
good
there, like
question.
page 15, 16, I think.
I think so. So they adopted a policy, and I think I gave it to you.
Yep, I see it. It's highlighted, yeah, page 15, 16, I see it.
You do?
At least in the draft that was given to us.
Okay.
Here, it's highlighted.
15, 16. Page 15, you said?
Yep,
Complaint process.
investigation process, corrective action. 1, 2, and 3, page
Yeah.
15 into 16. I think this is what we had passed earlier.
Is there anything else? Yeah, we passed this and it was, spent several months working on it. So that this was important to include. Is there anything else in here, Lori, that you would point us to involving the council relationship with the town manager? I mean, this is the only employee we oversee is the town manager.
Right.
So is there anything else in here that either
So
supersedes that or?
So I'm not seeing that on page 15 of
It's
our,
you're on investigation process, corrective action. It's just above, I think, drug-free workplace where you are. Let me just see.
okay, that, okay.
There we go. Yeah, our page number.
This is only relative to complaints alleging discrimination and harassment, though. Is that, so are you good with that? This is a very specific complaint process, not a general complaint process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, we wanted to make sure that, if something like this occurred, that we had a
Okay.
process.
Yep.
So the town manager wasn't overseeing an investigation involving a complaint against the town, someone from the council.
Yep.
Yep, okay.
So yellow stays is what they're, just to
Yeah,
confirm,
sorry.
yellow stays. Yep. Yeah, it was in ordinance and we're keeping it. We didn't change anything.
Right. Good, good,
Okay.
good. Thank you.
And then, but then there's nothing else in here that changes or otherwise alters the relationship between the manager and the council.
No.
And again, for the most part, this is the two major objectives that'll probably end up in the memo is number one, better communication with staff, because this is what we don't have. I think that's the biggest thing that we're correcting, is just how we get that out there to them and making it easier. I think the second is that there are no substantive major changes in how we're operating today. And that's how I'm going to communicate it to the staff in December at our training and say, that yes, we're adopting a new handbook. Please look at it if you think there's major differences, but from all the work I've done with the team, this is kind of the status quo. The only, and again, it puts a few things into words that have disappeared. We do not have a dress code, but there is a verbal communication that you will dress appropriately. So we put that in there that you will dress appropriately. There is there's no cost to this either, but like comp time for public works is allowed to accumulate to 80 hours. That's not in writing. It is now. So those are the sort of things that we brought forward, that anything that was maybe conversational has now been documented. We do have work, you will see us back on this, on the wellness side, in this, because it needs some development, but we've got it memorialized as it sits today, and we're gonna work from there as we go forward on what our wellness policies are. But,
So Clint, when you talk about why we did this, though, it's not, yes, I think one of the huge things is a communication tool for the employees. But remember that the ordinances were not in compliance.
yeah,
And many things that are required for an employee handbook for compliance were not in ordinance. And,
Yep.
you know, reasonably so. We wouldn't expect,
Yep.
you wouldn't expect to see everything in ordinance.
Yep.
And it was unwieldy to try to keep it in ordinance and update it, you know, for HR compliance with the changes in laws every year. Every year we have changes in laws. So I think we need to add that, and I can draft the memo, why we did this, if you want me to. So I think all those reasons need to be included with the discussion with the employees as well as the council and the public.
I like that the handbook is no longer gendered, has a gender, you know, it's just, you know, town, you know, municipal work isn't man's work, but it's just remarkable to me. And I brought this up at one point where, with our prior manager, like, you know, the word he appears 67 times or something like that in our ordinances. And, how unwieldy it was, that I gotta respond back with how much work it would be to go through all the ordinances and change the gender.
Well, that was one thing that I think with the 2021 changes, that was one of the things that was
Yes,
trying to be addressed.
yeah,
Yeah,
And they just never got incorporated into the code of ordinances that are online.
yeah, it just
Right.
never got published, you know, so that's what we,
it's,
yeah.
yeah, it basically got dropped somewhere along the lines. And so unfortunately, the town's website still has outdated material. And when we instruct our staff to go to the website to see the personnel policies, and then they come back with questions about why they're not getting a benefit that is on the website, it's pretty hard as a manager to explain.
It looks like smoke and mirrors and.
Yeah.
I think this, one of the things that I think will be helpful in our communicating about this is, it's just saying like, this, make sure that everybody has clear expectations and understanding in every direction, so that, you know, there's no way less chance for possible feelings of resentment, of feeling mistreated, like there's just, everybody knows what the expectations are in every direction. I think this is valuable.
And I can't stress enough, this is a major step forward, to go from a place where it's all over and inconsistent, and I don't know when it was or wasn't amended. Did or didn't it go to the council for review? Which you're supposed to review every rule the town sets. It was a mess. So now, I know you've seen it, we've got a clear date and time, sometime here in January, February. This book is real, I give it to the staff. There's a problem and it's not in the handbook, we'll deal with it, because you can still have those sort of issues, but at least we got a starting point where we're all looking at the same document in one place.
Alright. Can we talk about how we bring the handbook? If we don't have any other questions about the handbook as it is, we're gonna get a clean copy back, to be part of our council material for Monday's meeting.
Yep.
Alright, so how are we gonna handle if other counselors in their review have questions about the handbook or suggestions about the handbook in terms of, we don't want 7 people drafting, trying to redraft something that's been developed by an HR consultant in town leadership and lawyers. So how do we manage this? Obviously, if there's something people catch and bring it forward, what's the right way for those kinds of concerns? Do we give counselors? Sure.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Is it inappropriate to suggest that the committee's recommending we need to have an handbook in place? And there's always an evolving document, and if you have issues that you're addressing right now, that we need to look at in the future, let's start that queue of things you want us to look at for the next review, which we will build that up and address as an ordinance review committee over the next year.
I think that's a good framework for it. Say like, there might be problems here, but it's just the creation is solving a problem. And yeah, as you see more things, let's keep track of them more when we're reviewing this.
That being said, if there's a major issue,
It might make
bring it
sense
up.
to put in there if there's some substantive change
Yeah.
that is really like
Yeah.
The likelihood of them, these people missing it, but is not likely, obviously, but I think it's fair enough to just put that out, that, yeah, position it that way, like, we're not looking for revising this thing to perfection today, or, you know, covering every edit, but if there's anything substantive,
Yeah.
then let's talk about it. If not, then, you know, let's make a list.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, so we're not looking for a council redraft of this. We're looking, if there's something substantive, bring it forward and we have a conversation. Maybe we could even, in the interim council meeting between the public hearing and the vote, maybe that's an opportunity for someone to.
Yeah, I was going to make a recommendation. You're having a public hearing on 1/13. You're gonna roll this out on 12/9.
Yeah.
What I would
True.
recommend is tell all councilors, we need another layer of eyes. Take a look at the document. We have to be sure that we release a public copy before the public hearing or at the public hearing notice time. So within the next 2 weeks, if you see something that's glaring, or you see something we need to have eyes on, send that information to Dan. And then what Dan can do is work with Clint's office to, if there is a glaring thing, we can take a look at that before the public hearing notice gets put out.
Or Rob.
Yeah, let's do Rob. if
Or
that makes
Rob,
sense.
yeah.
He's chaired, that's committee, yep.
Yeah, but I mean, that way you're not getting any surprises at the council meeting or feeling as though you've got all these.
I mean, after
I
the
wouldn't
public
think
hearing,
it's that strong that we need a set of extra
Right,
eyes, to be
but-
honest, but
Yeah.
I see where you're going, I think that makes sense.
and again, a public hearing, if community comes forward with an issue, you have every right to correct that before you final approval. So there's not like you stop the process, the public hearing, boy, on page 8, you definitely gotta delete whatever word.
I just don't want anyone to
Yeah.
come in with their own red line version of this document once, if it's substantive,
Mm.
you know, and or a question, you know, and obviously people will ask the questions they're gonna ask, but I don't want to create the expectation that now it's our turn as councilors to draft it, you know, do what we want with the handbook.
Yeah,
I think we can welcome real substantive changes, but when are we planning on the annual review to be beside that?
Next year, December, January.
December, January, so we could say, well, we'll keep a list, and if there are real substantial things throughout the year that we notice, or things that need to come in compliance, so this can be amended. But this is just to get us at a baseline.
And the kind of way I see this is that you guys review all ordinances, and that's the ordinance review committee.
Yeah.
It's just gonna come forward that at the November, December meeting, staff will come forward with a memo and says,
mhm,
we do or do not propose any changes. If there's no changes, annually, I think you would still have to have a public hearing to say that we're presenting the handbook with no amendments
mhm.
for the year, and then you just present it.
Someone wants to come in with it.
And you'd probably, that would be a year you would consent calendar the handbook, because you're making no changes, it's just boom, get it through.
Great.
And I'm not saying likelihood of no changes ever, we'll see, but you know. Usually there's a lot that happens that we have to adjust, so cool.
Great. Anything else you all need from us?
I think we got it, that's great. Okay, you got some time, you wanna talk about what you wanna do going forward?
With the committee? I mean, are there things that come to mind for folks? I mean, I didn't have any other agenda items planned for us.
We talked about the schedule first, so we're scheduling this for, the next one looks like it was Wednesday in January, right?
Yeah, we said the second Wednesday of every month, right?
At 9.
At 9, 10, I've got a different, I had a different hole in my calendar for,
I wrote it down in a different notebook.
so I was holding 10:30 on December 11th, obviously that's not, this is our meeting for this month, so that's off my calendar. And then I was invited to Council or Ordinance Review Committee meeting on 10:30 on Wednesday, January 8th.
Yep, so that would be the second Wednesday of the month. Yeah, so 10:30, second Wednesday of each month.
Yeah.
That's what we determined. And we're not having a meeting next week, right? There's nothing else that this committee needs to do. We moved this back because of the public hearing we want to have on the 9th.
Yeah.
Great.
I moved you forward to get this going. So yeah, the next one would be January 8th, 10:30 a.m.
Great.
and that's the routine time.
All right, and that'll be the series, all right.
And as per our sort of new rules, if there isn't anything that's been put on our slate as a committee, we may not have to meet. It's just, we'll see sort of how the full council determines the workflow here.
Okay.
Or if we feel like there's something they need to review or staff bring something up.
The other one you got is, when do you wanna start the ordinance,
Yeah.
which ones do you wanna do and when?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're open to hearing from staff, sort of what we'll think needs review as we're going through. I know you have a big list.
Maybe we do an intro, Shelley can do that, that's her job, that's why she's here, she's gonna be overseeing the ordinance processes with you, so
Yeah.
maybe if you guys met on the 8th, that would be the
Yeah,
topic,
walk us
just do
through
a
it.
presentation.
Yeah.
Show you the timeline and kind of work it and say what you wanna do.
Yeah, you can let us know sort of what the high priorities are,
Mhm.
your suggestion for what we start with. That sounds good.
We gotta change the dog leash ordinance, because I'm frequently out of compliance and I've got a situation.
Yeah, I never see you wearing a dog leash.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, well, it sounds like we have a good expectation for where we're going next. Thank you, Lori, for all of your
24
work.
foot, yes, thank you, Lori, this was great.
You're welcome.
And will you be with us at the council
You
meeting?
need her, you can, I was not leaning to
It's up
that.
to you, yeah, sorry.
Okay. We got you. Thank you for your work today. We'll follow up afterwards, Lori. We've got her
Great.
busy on some other ones. She's a big
Okay.
part of our 19th training day.
Great.
Great, all right, thank you, Lori. So, and then the 8th will kind of walk through and Shelley will give us some thoughts, sorry, that's great.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, meeting adjourned.
Nice job.
All right.
Started